Let's talk about thin privilege. Thin privilege is defined as the power and advantages systematically accorded to people with thinner and smaller bodies. Some examples of thin privilege include not being denied medical care because of your weight, airlines not charging you more money to fly, and being more likely to get a raise or promotion than your fat counterparts. As well as everyday, seemingly mundane things, like being able to comfortably fit into public transit seats and even hospital gowns. A lot of people have argued that thin privilege isn't real because thin people have also experienced body shaming for being too thin and have body image issues like everybody else. But as Christy Harrison beautifully put, having thin privilege doesn't mean that you've never had any body image issues or that you've never struggled with disordered eating or that you've never been bullied or shamed by people for your size. Fat phobia goes beyond bullying. It includes being dehumanized and systematically ignored and discriminated against in healthcare, education, employment, you name it. As a small fat who is also white, I experience both thin privilege and white privilege. Therefore, even though I may get some rude messages or comments about my body, I'm still seen as a more acceptable level of fat than someone, for instance, who's a mid-fat or super fat. And if you don't know what mid-fat or super fat means, here is a helpful infographic of the fatness spectrum. Of course, as with everything, intersectionality is super important. Somebody like me, who's a white small fat, will have a vastly different experience than someone who is both black and a super fat, and vice versa. The experiences we have are completely different, as well as the way we are perceived and treated in the world. And I absolutely benefit from thin privilege. I know that as a size 16, I can go to the doctor and I'm more likely to have my symptoms taken seriously. I can semi-comfortably fit in an airplane seat, and I know that I have the benefit of living in a white society where I have never experienced racism. The treatment of fat people gets worse once you consider things like size, race, gender, and income. Thin privilege highlights the systemic disparity in the treatment between fat people and non-fat people. And because people usually get really angry whenever thin privilege or privilege in general is mentioned, this is not an attack on thin people. This is a critique of the fat phobia that's embedded within society and how fat phobia pervades life in seemingly trivial, mundane ways. Take some time to think about how you might benefit from or be harmed by thin privilege, and how you might perpetuate fat phobia in your daily life.
Great question. It's a privilege to have time to exercise. It's a privilege to have the ability to afford a gym membership. It's a privilege to be able to fit into gym machines. It's a privilege to know what to do in a gym. It's also a privilege to live in the vicinity where a gym is. If you saw one of my last videos, I talk about how gyms are built in certain affluent areas. It's a privilege to be able to get outside into a safe neighborhood and walk or jog. It's a privilege to be able-bodied enough to exercise. It's a privilege to be able to afford the right clothes to exercise in. It's a privilege to be able to easily find clothes that fit you to exercise in. It's a privilege to not feel intimidated when walking into a gym. It's a privilege to not feel like you shouldn't be somewhere just because of your size or your gender. And it's also a privilege to have the time, the access, or the money to cook so-called health foods. So yeah, it's a privilege.
Guys, do you remember the time when I posted an almost identical video to this? But I was told that I should avoid potatoes. I was given unwanted and unsolicited health advice when I was minding my own business, just making a cooking video. But I was told that I needed to avoid potatoes. Do you remember that? Do you remember how fat people and thin people are not allowed to exist in the same way on the internet? You remember that? Again, no hate to this guy. I have no issue with him, and I don't hate him. I'm also not mad at him either. I am using his video as an example to compare how thin people and fat people are not treated the same way. So,
someone tell me if I'm overreacting with this, because I feel like I'm not, but I don't know. So, the gym I go to, there is a trainer who takes my equipment when I'm using it. So, and it's not like I had a stool that I had my water bottle and stuff on, and he literally put them on the ground next to the stool and took the stool when I had walked away to go blow my nose. So, earlier this week I'm doing deadlifts, and then he has a client start throwing like a 20-pound ball, right? Like doing throws in the air, and the ball's landing like a foot in front of me. And there's a pretty big open area. So I moved into deadlift somewhere else. But like he clearly had the client do them near me, I think, because the whole area is open. Why would you not put them somewhere else? And then today I was doing battle ropes, and there's 2 open squat racks with monkey bars between them. And so I put the battle ropes on one of the rack legs. And now this time it's a different trainer. It's been consistently the same trainer. And earlier this week versus taking, the shit I'm using. So this trainer, while I'm using it with a completely open squat rack, set up the safety bars and had a client start doing rack pulls while I'm using the ropes. So I'd ask them, like, hey, are you okay if I still finish this set? And she goes, oh, yeah. So I start, doing my set. And then she had the 60-year-old client step over the safety arms to get into the rack to do the rack pulls while I'm doing the ropes while there's a completely open squat rack. I took the ropes, went to this open squat rack, but I feel like they're intentionally letting me know they don't want me at their gym, and I just can't. Am I overthinking this?
Sorry, not everybody fits in the bad bitch genre. It's a genre.
They don't know that I know this hack.
Yeah? Well, you need a salad because you're fat as fuck.
I swear these stories are the skinny girl equivalent of, and then everyone in Trader Joe's clapped. 'Cause, oh my god, that never happened.
Emily Mariko has recently posted some videos of her going to In-N-Out to get fast food. And I was really curious what the comment section would look like on her videos. But to my surprise, after scrolling through hundreds of comments, I couldn't find anyone saying anything negative about what she was eating. In fact, people were praising her for normalizing eating fast food and helping them with their eating disorders. Now bear in mind, Emily Mariko is very thin. A few days before I saw that video, I had posted a video of me eating out at Burger King, explaining that you can go out to a fast food restaurant while you're on a weight loss journey and still lose weight. As long as you're eating in moderation, it's fine. And keep in mind, I am not thin. People lost their shit in my comment section. And people say thin privilege isn't real.
Say it again, fat girls with skinny faces have privilege.
100%. I completely agree with this. As a plus size model, I've been on both sides of the spectrum. In January, I got diagnosed with a really rare blood disease, and they are treating it with prednisone. One of the things is prednisone, and it's making me have a bunch of water retention. So now I have this, and I have indentions here from my cheeks being puffy, and my eyelids are swollen a lot. And so I have noticed that there are some companies and brands that only deal with plus size models that have really thin faces. Now, on top of that, I've had a bunch of other smaller brands and companies reach out to me for me to start modeling for them because now I look more plus size. Whereas before, I guess it was kind of a toss up. I'm still a size 26 either way. But yeah, it's weird.
Just dawned on me how many people don't understand how rarely fat people actually receive evidence-based medicine from doctors. One time, I went in for an ear infection and the doctor told me to lose weight. You know what thin people get? Antibiotics. One time, I found a lump and I made an emergency appointment to get a cancer screening. It was at an OBGYN, and as soon as the doctor walked in, he didn't look at me, he didn't introduce himself, he looked at my chart and he said, "You'd have an easier time getting pregnant if you lost weight." I told him, "I'm not here for fertility treatment, I'm here for a cancer screening." And he said, "Oh, okay," and started the appointment, never said sorry. And I would need to make a 20-part series for the saga I went through last year when I needed spinal surgery for a lifelong spinal defect that had nothing to do with my weight. And this is the norm. It's typical for this to happen.
I hope that you choke on a piece of concrete and literally go to hell. I will see you in fucking hell, you fucking asshole, you fucking liar, you fucking manipulator,